Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. On November 5th, 2018, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, commenced an indefinite strike following the federal government's inability to implement its 2017 Memorandum of Understanding with the union. Joining us now to speak on the breach of agreement by the federal government is ASUU President, Professor Biodun Ogunyemi. Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Nigerians.
So can we start,
Thank
sir?
you very much.
Can we start, sir, by your clarification on the actual genesis of the ASUU strike? What is in the MOU of 2017? What does it contain? And why are you adamant that its provisions must be adhered to?
Well, thank you very much. The 2017 Memorandum of Action has 7 items. The first one is fund for revitalization. The second one has to do with end academic allowances. The third has to do with shortfall in salaries. We also have on the list registration of NOPENCO, which is the pension fund administrator for university staff. We have the issue of university staff school. We have the problem of state universities. And we also have issues related to university governance. We were brought to the point of Memorandum of Action after government signed a Memorandum of Understanding in 2013. That Memorandum of Understanding of 2013 was actually a fallout from federal government ASUU agreement of 2009. In that agreement, we have 4 key issues. The issue of funding for the universities, the issue of conditions of service for university workers, particularly academics, the issue of university autonomy and academic freedom, and the issue of enabling environment and other related issues. Those 4 key areas, they have formed the pillars for ASUU's engagement with government since the early 80s. We had the first engagement in 1982. We had a landmark agreement in 1992, which still addressed those 4 key areas. But what we have seen over the years was that government would single out the salary component. And once the government implemented the salary component, government would go to sleep. It will take some other actions from the union. But before we embarked on any action, we'll have consulted widely, we'll have held meetings, and we'll have written a number of letters. So this has been the trend over the years. And in 2017, we still did all of this. And when we signed that Memorandum of Action, government promised that they will resuscitate the item of revitalization, which required that government will massively inject fund to the tune of 1.6 trillion into the university system, 1.3 trillion into the university system over a period of 6 years. But what we observed was that between 2013 and 2015, government was only able to inject the first tranche, which was 200 billion. We expected 5 other tranches between then and now, and government has not said anything about that. What government rather told us in 2017 was that government would release 20 billion between September and October of that year as a sign of commitment to that aspect of the agreement. Government also promised to pay our members the outstanding allowances, which we call earned academic allowances, after the release of the forensic audit. We waited for 6 months that they promised. Government did not do anything. Just like the one for for revitalization, where they promised to release 20 billion as a mark of commitment. Government also did not do anything until we were embarked on this strike, until we resumed the suspended strike. So the first two areas, as I mentioned, were not addressed, revitalization and academic allowances. The third area that was not addressed was the issue of shortfall in salaries. For over a year, some of our universities were owed fractions of their salaries. In some universities, lecturers were being paid as low as 50% of their monthly salaries. So we asked for this, and government promised that they would do what they call PICA verification. PICA means Presidential Initiative for Continuous Audit. And government was saying that any university that was PICA verified, they will be paid immediately. That also did not happen. The fourth area that was not addressed in that memorandum of action was the issue of state universities. We engaged government to say that this idea of proliferating state universities and the meddlesome roles of governors in the affairs of universities, they were infringing on university autonomy and academic freedom. And government promised to create a platform where this matter will be addressed. In fact, in particular, we reported the case of Kogi State government, in which the governor, in one fell swoop, sacked about 120 lecturers, tested seasoned academics. So we reported that to government, and the governor did not stop there. The governor said he was proscribing ASUU in that university. That governor did not have that power and still does not have the power. So these four key issues were outstanding. Even the issue of Nupenco, which is our PFA, government has not fully addressed it, but because we were still engaging the appropriate agency, we said, okay, we'll wait and see how it comes out. But the other three areas, the issue of TSA, the issue of staff school, and the issue of pension was fairly addressed. And so we said these four outstanding issues must be given attention, and we wrote at least 3 letters to the federal government. We had a number of meetings with them. All we were having were promises. But when we were to suspend the action in September 2017, we did warn that our members would not hesitate to resume the action if government failed on its promises. That was the genesis of the strike.
All right, sir. I would like to probably call your attention to a very particular issue, which is the fact that are they not aware of the plight of the Nigerian students? Because this frequent strikes has almost fractured the tertiary educational system in Nigeria. And because the federal government and those negotiators for the federal government, all right, to be very precise, Dr. Babalaki has actually said that, for example, you mentioned some of the trenches that were supposed to be paid. They said that it was a separate agreement being hatched out between ASUU and the then President Goodluck Jonathan, and which was not even part of the 2009 negotiations. And they've tried to bring all this together, and at the end of the day, ASUU are just not willing to probably look at these things. Are you people not probably looking at the plight of the Nigerian student and how much this will further debase the educational institution in Nigeria?
I think you have lumped about 3 major issues. The first one is about the agreement of 2009. I've highlighted the 4 key areas. The other issue is about negotiation with Babalaki. The Babalaki committee is a different issue. I'll come back to that. And the third one is the plight of Nigerian students. Let me start with the last one. When people talk of the Nigerian students, they always forget that ASUU members are also parents. And ASUU would not consciously inflict pains on the students. But as for the students, we have always assure them that what we are doing is in their interest, and it is also in the interest of Nigeria as a country. In 2012, we did a needs assessment of public universities in Nigeria. The federal government sponsored that project. It was a federal government committee. As I speak here, I visited a first-generation university where kerosene stove was being used as bouncing burners. Kerosene stoves were being used as bouncing burners. The taps in the laboratories were dry, no water. They were fetching water to the laboratories to perform experiments. We visited their libraries. They were bereft of current books, titles, and journals. And you can imagine the quality of education that was going on in that environment. That was a first-generation university. Not to talk of the mushroom federal and state universities that we are seeing around now. So we should talk about students within the context of the quality of education they are getting. In fact, we visited students' hostels. Rooms meant for 4 students were being occupied by 12, 20 students. And students were sleeping in shifts. So since the release of that first tranche, we have seen some semblance of injection of new lease of life. And if we had continued on that, by now we should be talking of a different story. We should situate the plight of students into the quality of certificates they are earning, such that they too can be proud of the certificate they get. And when they go out there, they can compete favorably with their peers. By the way, let me assure you that if you have any graduate that has read any of the fields in sciences today, going to North America, in particular that I know of, to do higher degree, they will first subject them to auditing courses at undergraduate level because they no longer have confidence in the quality of the certificate they take there. It's different, it may be slightly different in the liberal arts and the management sciences. So we have to first put that into context when we talk of the plight of students. If we need to slow down to fix our universities, I think we should all be prepared to pay the price. Many parents, including myself, were paying the price already because our children are back at home with us. Then talking about the agreement that we signed. Well, because you mentioned Babalaki, I will also remind him that he signed that agreement in 2009 as the chairman of the Committee of Pro-Chancellors. So he cannot distance himself from that agreement. So it was the agreement of 2009 that gave rise to Memorandum of Understanding of 2013 and Memorandum of Action of 2017. It is not as if ASUU has imported any extraneous matter into what we are talking about. I told you how the 4 areas we have been addressing have been broken down, and we have always accommodated new issues that emerged along the line. That is what ASUU has been doing. What we are doing is patriotic in the sense that even you out there, I'm not sure any of your children are in public primary school or public secondary school today. We want to be sure that we will not fold our arms until all of us are ashamed to send our children to public universities. That will happen if we don't all rise in unison to make our ruling class to do what is necessary to fix Nigerian education. That is the patriotic duty ASUU has taken upon itself. And so when we do this, people should not see us as if we are antagonistic or we are enemies of our students or enemies of their parents, or in fact, those who don't love this country. We are doing it because we love this country. If you take the average scholar in Nigeria today, if you remove them from Nigeria and put them in the worst class university today, they will excel. But we are not able to deliver on our mandate because the environment we are operating are no longer conducive. So we need to address the issue of environments for learning, environment for teaching, environment for cutting-edge research. And that is what we are asking for, so that we can all be proud of Nigerian education. People are quick to say your products are no longer employable, your products are not competitive, and Nigerian universities are not well ranked. How can we achieve it when we don't all work collectively to fix what is wrong about our university education? Talking about Babalaki, we have, I hope you will allow me to address that.
Go ahead.
Talking about Babalaki, we have a different platform where we are engaging with his committee, and that is the aspect of renegotiating the 2009 agreement on those 4 key issues that I earlier highlighted. The problem we have with Dr. Wale Babalaki San is that he did not come to that table with open minds. He came with fixated ideas. He wanted to impose his position on us, and we have always rebuffed it. You see, the 2009 agreement, even as at then, we are talking of 24 federal universities, and what was budgeted, what was agreed at, as at then, was 4.5 trillion as a repositioning, for repositioning the federal universities then. But when government failed to implement, we started agitating, and that led to the needs assessment report that I talked about. It is the implementation of that needs assessment report that we are asking for each time we talk of revitalization. The recommendations of that report were earth-shaking. The report was presented to the Federal Economic Council, the National Economic Council, and both state governors and federal government agents were all alarmed, and we agreed. So government is a continuum. Let nobody put a divide between one government and the other. Governments are supposed to successively implement what is good for the country. So as for Babalaki, we disagree with him because his proposal for addressing the rot and decay in Nigerian universities is on how to inflict tuition fees on students. He proposed in his presentation that Nigerian students should be borrowing 1 million per annum, out of which 700,000 will be paid to universities in order to run the universities. We don't think that will fix Nigerian education, because what we are saying is that in 4 years, a student will have a debt of 4 million hanging on their neck, and that is a life sentence to indebtedness. That will not address the Nigerian problem. It will compound the problem for us, because elsewhere, the education bank Babalaki was promoting has failed, and many people are going back to talk about the responsibility of government in funding education. So on that, we disagree with him, and we remain disagreed.
Well, Professor Ogunyemi, the crux of the matter here is funding, and Mr. Babalakin's position is that the government it's not sustainable to have the government continue to fund the universities. They have to look for alternative sources. That is one on one hand. The other is, we all agree as Nigerians that there is a decay in the education sector, and there's an urgent need to fix this. But it seems ASUU is standing that this present strike would fix all that decay. If not, is there an offering from the government that can end the strike? If you are prioritizing your demands, which one would end the strike? Or are you expecting all the demands to be met with this industrial action before you call up the strike?
All right. The issue of funding, you are correct to say government alone cannot fund education. We are not in disagreement on that, but we have also identified sources. In our own report, in our own proposal to the negotiating table, people have been talking of alumni support, people have been talking of consultancy to universities, people have been talking of philanthropies, people have been talking of donor agencies, and so on and so forth. All those areas were identified. In fact, what we said was that if you fix our university, it's like an investment. Before you know it, our consultancy units will be doing marvelous things that will bring in a lot of income into the universities. In fact, if you fix our universities, rather than our students go to the Republic of Benin, Ghana, or Egypt, or South Africa, you will see a reversal of trends. And Nigerian universities will be attracting foreign students, and then we can charge them appropriate fees. We used to have that in the 60s and 70s. Where are we today? It is the other way around. Talking about minimum for our strike, it is not correct to say ASUU is insisting that all the issues must be addressed at once. There was no strike action that ASUU embarked on, and we said until we had everything, nothing else will happen. Take the issue of the fertilization fund that we talked about. I said we have 5 tranches outstanding. Government needs to tell us, are we going to give 2 tranches, 3 tranches? We have started discussion on that. Talk about shortfall in salaries. As government released the fund, we are just talking about 11 or 12 universities that we identified. But we are hearing in the media now that government said they have done something about that. We have not seen it. We are talking of end academic allowances. Government promised to mainstream it into annual budget so that by next year, we'll not be talking of arrears of allowances for 2019. Government sponsored a forensic audit. The report of the forensic audit is out. The amount that is owed has been calculated and released. What is government doing about it? We have not been told. Is government going to pay everything? Is government going to pay 70% or something? We have not seen that. So it is what is before us that we address. Government promised to set up a platform. Government has not set up that platform. So when we talk of these 4 key areas, we are asking government, let us see what you have done. If it is acceptable, we'll go back to our members, and our members will take their decision. But until we see what is on the table, if government has chosen to just be talking or dancing around the issues, then we cannot take that as factual. We cannot take that as deliverables. So until we see the deliverables on the table, we will have something to take back. That is where we can have something to take back to our members. We are not yet. We are not at that point yet. That is the issue.
So, Professor Ogunyemi, if after 6 or 7 meetings, we understand since you commenced this industrial action, there's nothing serious in the offing, don't you think that it has defeated the purpose?
No, it cannot defeat the purpose. It cannot defeat the purpose because the problem we have in this country is that we don't hold governments accountable. People should not make promises only to turn their back on their promises. Until we start doing that, we will not have a better country. We will not have effective governance or good governance, as they say. Our own challenge is that let people see the reason behind our action. Our advocacy for improved quality education is to help this country. And if people leave this job to ASUU alone, in another few years, we'll come back to mourn or bemoan our misfortune. I asked you, how many children do you have in public primary? How many do you have in public secondary? That is the issue. Are we waiting for a time that all of us will have to borrow money to send children to private universities or to send them abroad? And then we will have killed our country. The last bastion of quality education in Nigeria resides with the university. We should all rise to defend it. And that is why we must not abandon this struggle. ASUU will not abandon the struggle, and we believe other Nigerians will join us along the line.
However, Professor, NANS has not joined you. NANS have waded into this issue not as an ally to ASUU, but against both ASUU and the federal government because they feel that the rights of the students and the interests of the students are not being protected. This is in spite of how you have so eloquently expressed your end goal. NANS is not satisfied. Other stakeholders in society are not satisfied. There's a concern, which I would like you to address, that your threat of an indefinite strike might result in a Pyrrhic victory that costs more to the victor, if there is one, than the vanquished, whereby the funds that you are demanding sort of will be outweighed by the collateral damage that you are doing long-term to Nigerian students and institutions. Do you care to address this, sir?
Well, I don't know what to mean by collateral damage. I said it earlier that only a few people make the difference in any society, in any organization. If Nigerian academics fail to do what they are doing, if Nigerian academics fail to defend quality education, then there is no future for this country. The students, of course, it will be painful, but there's no change, no transformation that comes easy. So if we can sit together and reason together, we will see that what ASUU is doing is in the overall interest of the students, of their parents, including ASUU themselves, ASUU members themselves, and the entirety of the country. So anytime people say, ASUU, you are destroying education, we always tell them, what we are doing is what we failed to do when primary education was collapsing. Until finally, nobody is talking about public primary. What we failed to do when public secondary was collapsing, and we all pretended. NUT struggled in their own little way. We didn't support NUT. Let me tell you, in Rwanda today, they have transformed their public educational institutions that private schools are folding up. That is how it should be. Because Nigeria has over 60% of people that are poor. If we abandon this struggle, the children of the poor, they will end up being poor because they will drop out of schools. And once they drop out of universities and they cannot serve as catalysts to the transformation or to breaking the poverty circle, then we are sentenced to another round of underdevelopment.
Yes, Professor.
Nigeria is underdeveloped because our potentials are not being enhanced. I mean, they are not being harnessed. Until we come together and see what is wrong, we will not achieve the development we are yearning for.
Yes, but why has this coming together not happened? NANS has waded in, as I said, against you, not as your allies. Why is it that this vision is not being bought into?
Well, it depends on the quality of NANS you are talking about. We relate with them. We know what is going on there. Many of the so-called NANS leadership today, they are politicians. I'm saying that with all sense of responsibility. They are politicians. ASUU members are not, at least ASUU leadership that I can vouch for, they are not politicians. They are interested in what is in the best interest of this nation in the long-term run. On the long-term run, what ASUU is saying, we'll come back to talk about it if we are not ready to talk about it now. Our struggle is not targeted at any government. We have been doing this thing consistently, and that is to show you that our fight is a struggle that, that we are convinced about. And if we do not show the way, who else will show the way? If we cannot tell the society what is wrong about our education, about our roads, about our agriculture, about our engineering, about our law, which are all within our purview as scholars, then who else will tell us what is wrong about the society? So when people condemn ASUU, they might be blaming the victim, because in no time, people will turn around to say, you are producing very weak lawyers, you are producing engineers, doctors who do not know their onions, and so on and so forth. It is to prevent this. You know, our members have options. And that is why in the 80s, we were talking about brain drain. Many of them were leaving the universities in droves. And we are now beginning. There was the story of some of these leading politicians who went abroad for treatment. And they were referred to a world-class physician. It turned out to be a Nigerian. So these are things we should be harnessing, we should be investing in Nigeria. We now paid humongous amount to foreign countries to access them. Why can't we harness our resources, human material, and transform this country? That is at the root of ASUU struggles.
All right, you've mentioned the root of the struggle by ASUU. Now, I would like to get some clarification. How long do you want to keep this up? And would it go on forever, or at what point would you say enough is enough? If there is still no headway being made from the meetings you'll be having, and also from the meetings you've also had, where would you say we will call this off? Or would you wait until the government blinks before you would actually blink, or who would blink first as it actually stands right now?
We are not on an ego trip. We are not on an ego trip. We are actually not rubbing shoulder with the government. We are only thinking that reason will prevail. Our members out there, the National Executive Council of ASUU, is our principal. So if our principal today says, please forget about it, let Nigerians bemoan their misfortune, we will go back. But if Nigerians can prevail on government to say, these people are giving us warning signals that we think is correct, even you at the studio there, if you are convinced, you will join this struggle. So that in another 5, 10 years, you will not say, these people are warning us. These people are warning us. So that is where we are going. That is where we are. Our members will determine when this struggle will be over. And we are waiting for them.
Professor Ogunyemi, I asked earlier if you had to prioritize your demands and to say which one would actually, rub off well with you to go back to the classrooms. If we had to prioritize these 4 key areas during your meetings to end the strike, which one would it be? I didn't get a clear answer to that. And then we also understand that ASUU has agreed to work with the electoral umpire, INEC, in the forthcoming elections, despite or regardless of what the strike situation is at that time. Can you tell us more?
Well, as for INEC, we engaged them and we put our matter on the table. We are not on strike to disrupt elections. We did not declare a strike against INEC. So INEC is just tangential. INEC issues are just tangential. They are not core issues to our struggle. And before we went on this strike, the National Executive Council of our union had taken a position that for now, ASUU as a body will not be able to submit a list of ad hoc staff to INEC. However, our members, as free citizens, can work with INEC as ad hoc staff in recognition of our community service role. It's a leg of our assignment. Anything that is good for the country, in the interest of the country. By the way, ASUU is a pro-democracy organization. We are part of the agitation for institutionalization of democracy. So we cannot do anything that will undermine it. So let our members freely, out of their free will, work with INEC and support them to achieve the goal of the electoral success. Flawless, credible elections in the country. That's in the national interest. As for prioritization, all the issues are interconnected. But let me ask you, will you say that our members should forego part of their salaries that were withheld? Will you say that their outstanding or arrears of academic allowances should also be forgone? Will you say our members who are unjustly sacked in some state and federal universities, particularly at Ilorin, should be left out? Or will you say that we don't need revitalization for us to go back and work effectively to deliver our mandate? So when you ask these 4 questions, for me and for our members, we believe they are inseparable. And to the extent that government is addressing them satisfactorily, our members will be satisfied. And that is why I said earlier, for instance, that if there are 5 tranches and we're asking government, we don't say you should pay all the 5 tranches. Tell us what you can pay. I don't think that is unfair. I think it's fair enough. So on all these issues, we have streamlined them And we believe that with further engagement, like we are meeting the government today, we hope they are going to present something concrete about these areas that will impress our members enough.
We really do wish you all the best in today's meeting, but I'd also now at this point like your comments on recent reports of the massive underfunding of the education sector. I have to cite the figures. 4.57 billion naira has been spent out of 61.48 billion naira budgeted in 10 years. This is a minute fraction. The UN benchmark, United Nations benchmark, is 26%, whereas 2009's budgetary allocation from the budget presented by President Buhari, which of course the numbers might be increased or reduced depending on how the states that the National Assembly passes this budget that he presented. But the budget presented by President Buhari marks the worst allocation in 9 years at 5.23%. of the recommended 26%. What are your comments on this dire situation?
Well, I'm happy you are coming back to the point we have always raised.
I was always at the point, but I do need to ask you, Prof. I do need to actually ask you what your view is about NANS and other issues. You're being interviewed, yes, you're not being harassed.
No, yes, you are okay. You are okay. No problem with that. No problem with that. But we are saying that the development of a country hinges largely on the quality of education. No country can be greater than the quality of their education. And that is why you see some other countries in Africa, Ghana, Egypt, South Africa, where our youths are trooping to seek university education. Go and look at them. None of them gives below 20% to education. Ghana has consistently given 20–25% to education in the last 10 years. And that is why we can see quality, we can see improvement in their quality of education. But because successive regimes in the country have continued to play or pay lip service to education, we are witnessing the steady decline. And that steady decline will not be in the overall interest of the country. You see, this government came to power saying they will give a minimum of 15% to education. When we are beginning to see this steady decline, 7%, now below 7%, we start wondering, and people will still say ASUU was becoming intransigent. ASUU was becoming too difficult to handle. We cannot keep quiet. Even at the retreat, interministerial retreat that they had November 2017, the Honorable Minister of Education said there is none of the D8 countries that gives below 20% to education. We have always drawn their attention to this, and that as long as they continue this way, Nigerian education will continue to go under. And that means underdevelopment for the country. The two major indices of human capital development are health and education. And if we are failing on both, or particularly on education, we are not going to go anywhere. So our comment, as we have always said, is that until Nigeria frees itself from the stranglehold of foreign agencies, particularly IMF and World Bank, we cannot prioritize education, because what they are doing now is what they call the envelope budgeting system. What they do in envelope budgeting system is that they will say just give this amount, without due consideration to the priorities. Government has promised us, for instance, that they will mainstream and academic allowances into the 2019 budget. From the budget they are releasing now, we cannot see any evidence of that. So if tomorrow we raise issues about it, people will still say ASUU has come again. I think all Nigerians should join hands to prevail on the Nigerian government. It did not start with this government, by the way. It did not start with this government. So since we came back to what they call civil rule in the country, since 1999, we have been having this plunging or falling fortunes for Nigerian education. I think the time has come for us to work together to make Nigerian government to sit up and address the challenges in the education sector. Allocating 6%, 7% will not take us anywhere. State governors are worse. State governors are worse. Until the federal government decided to deduct from their Paris Club the funds, they were not willing to access UBEC fund. That was required for them to build the base of the pyramid for education, which is primary and secondary. They were not ready to access the fund because they were not releasing their counterpart funds. And for 5 years, some of these allocations to states were just there in the UBEC account. So Nigerian politicians, or let me say the ruling class, they actually do not see education as priority. And that is why you find that even the children of councillors, local government councillors, they are not in private, they are not in public primary or secondary. And but many of them now are finding their ways to private universities. It is as if we are trying to create an educational colony for the rich, while we destroy the base of public education. That will come back to haunt us because the rich will not be able to sleep when the poor are hungry because they are hungry.
All right, Professor.
The word is enough for the wise.
Professor Ogunyemi, but from what you have just said, which is actually very true, but the Dr. Wale Babalaking's negotiating team once made a recommendation to ASUU that there should be KPIs, key performance indexes, that should be met at every given time to be able to receive more funding by the government. And ASUU vehemently said no to that. And I begin to wonder if ASUU really wants the best for education in Nigeria.
I alluded to that in my presentation. I alluded to the fact that what Dr. Wale Babalaki particularly came up with a solution was that we should go back to the National Education Bank, whereby an undergraduate will borrow 1 million annually, out of which 700,000 will be paid into the universities, private and public. We actually saw, we smelled a rat. We smelled a rat.
No, I'm not talking about the National Education Bank.
For private universities. The National Education Bank is not new to Nigeria.
No, I'm not talking about the National Education Bank.
The experiment came up in 1993. It was folded up. It was folded up because of massive corruption and government's failure to live up to its expectation. So if we are going back to Education Bank, as we asked him, what guarantee do we have that that bank will be made workable this time around? What shield,
Professor Ogunyemi, I'm
what
making
guarantee
reference
do we
to
have?
the key performance index that was being suggested to ASUU as a means of checkmating the monies that were given to them to the level of development and the level of progress being made in the educational sector. I'm not talking about the National Education Bank.
What is key performance index or indicator? That is not a new concept. Every university has a mechanism for monitoring their finances. So if somebody is importing a World Bank concept, and we challenge them on that without calling it key performance index. Of course, his negotiation was not about policy. His negotiation was to look into the 4 areas that were spelled out to him. He went overboard and trying to recommend how to run university on day-to-day basis. All governing councils, the primary assignment given to them is how to manage the finances of the universities. And let me tell you, there was a new innovation that was brought into NEES assessment implementation. The projects that were to be carried out under the NEES assessment regime, there is what we call Budget Monitoring Committee. That Budget Monitoring Committee is established on every campus. And that committee, part of the assignment, is to determine the project priorities, the process of award, or what you call procurement, and of course, monitoring and evaluation. What else could be better than that? We have a publication on that. We have a guideline on that. So if anybody is trying to say we are bringing key performance indicator, there's nothing new about it. And we told him that he should not think that university scholars are not thinking. The frameworks are there. And because somebody wants to impose a concept that was borrowed elsewhere, and we rejected it, we are not wrong.
Professor Ogunyemi, we talk about declining funding for the education sector, especially in the budget, but we cannot overlook the general economic outlook of the country. Oil prices have crashed. The federal government says, you know, we are not as buoyant as we were before to even fund some of these demands ASUU is making. So let me ask, what is the practical solution to the funding of the education sector that ASUU is proposing? Because clearly you are against that which was proposed by the Babalakin-led committee. What is the practical solution to funding tertiary education in Nigeria? What is ASUU proposing? Because, you know, again, ASUU is against government increasing school fees.
Okay. I mentioned earlier that in our own presentation to the Babalaki committee during the negotiation, we brought up quite a number of suggestions. I mentioned the issue of alumni contributions. In many universities all over the world, alumni contributions is a key. I mentioned the issue of consultancy. There are key projects to which our members can deploy their expertise. It was part of our agreement in 2009. In fact, way back since 1992. Government is not exploring that. But you could see what happened, for instance. I can just remind you of what happened at the University of Maiduguri when our members were serving as consultants to NNPC. You can imagine what will come to that university if that process had been seen through. And if we have many of such consultancy engagements all over the place, ordinary talking about business plan, talking about finance monitoring, that they do in the ministries, they still bring in those they call their consultants, but they bring them in through the back door. We are saying that if you mainstream this process of consultancy, funds will come into the university. All these people they call their development partners, what are they bringing? You go to some countries where they still rely on the expertise of our members. You bring them in as consultants. It is as bad as even going to neighboring African countries. So we are saying that through consultancy, we can generate quite a lot of funds to support the running of our universities. We are saying there are some agencies in government, they call them cash cows. They are not capturing their funds in the annual budgets. Go and check it out. NCC, NNPC, even Central Bank. They have humongous funds that are diverted. When you hear about corruption in this country, those are the outlets. Those are the outlets where those funds
all right, Professor
came through.
Ogunyemi,
those
for the brevity of time,
so we've identified quite a number of sources, and our reports have the details.
We would just like you to probably hint us of what to expect today as ASUU goes into negotiations with the government.
Well, I cannot foretell how it will go, but we have always gone to every meeting with open mind. And as a union of intellectuals, we'll process whatever is presented, and we'll get back to our members who have sent us. They are our principal. But as of today, or as I speak now, I cannot tell you what will happen. However, we expect government to put on the table concrete deliverables that we can take back to our members. Well, have they paid the shortfalls to the universities? Let's see the evidence. Have they paid the end academic allowances? What percentage, or have they paid 100%? Let's see the evidence. Have they paid any tranche? 2, 3, any of the tranches that were outstanding? Let's see the evidence. So when we go to government today, we are going there with open minds, but like we have always said, we want deliverables that we can take back to our members.
All right, many thanks to you, Professor Ogunyemi, talking about the acting president of ASUU, as we're actually hoping for a favorable outcome into this meeting.